Welcome to the Friday edition of Developer Days. Today I'm going to be showing you all about connectivity customizers. So earlier I kind of built a connector with you, but now I'm going to show you how you can take an existing connector and kind of add some customization to it, hence the name customizers. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just dive right into the docs and kind of talk about what are customizers, how they're different from a SaaS connector, and when it's appropriate to use them. So let's go ahead and look really quickly. If we look into our connectivity space here, I can open up all of SaaS Connectivity, and then inside of there are the customizers. So if I click on here, it kind of gives you a nice overview in the documentation. But what they are is there's something that sits in between your SaaS connector and Identity Security Cloud. So in kind of most cases, Identity Security Cloud is talking directly to the SaaS connector, but when you use customizers, they actually sit in between. And that way they can intercept any command that comes out of Identity Security Cloud, and here you can write some custom code to maybe reach out to another service that you have, or do some logging, or just, well, really anything that you want to do when it comes to writing code. You can write it inside that customizer. It'll intercept that read request. You can mutate what gets sent to the actual connector itself. And then on its way back to Identity Security Cloud, you can then again intercept that message that comes back. You can have the same kind of code functionality that you had in the original one, and then you can pass that mutated response back into Identity Security Cloud. So really, Identity Security Cloud doesn't do anything differently as far as it doesn't know that there's a customizer there. I mean, it does, but it's just connecting to a connector just like it would any connector. But you can have this customizer sitting in between to intercept those responses and those requests. And that way it gives you a little more flexibility. The main reason why these are created, but not the only reason, is because now we offer a lot of out-of-the-box SaaS connectors. And so if you're using our out-of-the-box GitHub connector, for example, but it doesn't do exactly everything that you need it to do, instead of having to create a whole brand new SaaS connector just because this GitHub one doesn't do exactly what you need to do, and you basically replicate all the logic and everything in the GitHub connector, now you can use the customizer to just make those very small changes that you'd want to make. And that way you can have that, you can take advantage of all the work that SailPoint or maybe another developer has already done on that initial connector, but get the added features that you'd want out of the connector that you need. And so that's where it's most appropriate to use them. And if you've been with SailPoint for a long time, you may be thinking this sounds a lot like rules, and that's because it is a lot like rules. It's kind of designed to not replace rules, but to do the same kind of functionality that you got out of rules in the VA. Because the VA, you can't run rules against the current SaaS connectors. But I can't remember what I said there, but you can't run rules against the current SaaS connectors, but you can write these connector customizers. So they kind of allow you to have that similar functionality that you had with rules on the VA connectors, but now you can use that functionality against SaaS Connectivity. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is get started building this connector. There is a video tutorial up here, but since this is the video, we'll continue on. And the first thing you're going to do is create your first project. The prerequisites, by the way, are the same prerequisites that you'd have for a regular SaaS connector. So that hasn't really changed at all. If you've built a SaaS connector, then you can also build a connector customizer. So similar, you need Node installed, you need the CLI installed. It's also recommended that you have like Visual Studio Code, as well as Postman. So all those four things, once you have those things installed, you can probably get started building a connector. If you need more information about that, you can always just click here and get to that documentation. But here's the command, so SailCon customizer init, and then the name of your connector. So I'm just going to go into my PowerShell and paste that in, and then we'll call this one, and I guess I'm on the solar eclipse kick today, so solar eclipse customizer will work. I'll just put the year in here just for fun and hit enter, and it should create that customizer, which it did. So now it's created. You can kind of see the file structure there, and then I'm going to just navigate into it. And yeah, it's going to want to do the old one that I created earlier, but we can just change that path and go into there. And then I'm immediately going to open up Visual Studio Code with the code period shortcut. And as that opens, we now have Visual Studio Code open along with the source for the connector customizer. And I'm just going to make that a little bit, not smaller, bigger for you, so you can see the code a little better. And the first thing that we need to do, just like in SaaS Connectivity, is we need to download the dependencies. So let me go ahead and do that. Need our terminal. Open that up, and then npm install. And that's going to make sure that all of our dependencies are installed on this project. So while that's running, again, I always like to just show, if I go into the package.json, and again, if you've done SaaS Connectivity, this is all going to be very familiar to you. But if you have not, then this is good to see, and this just shows you all the scripts that you can run against this connector. We're going to be running these two scripts here, but then also we're going to pack and zip it, and then the deploy command will be in there as well. Most of these other commands you don't really need, but they're there in case you need them for different things. Obviously, the test command is good if you end up writing unit tests for your customizer as well. But yeah, so it looks like our dependencies installed, and you can see all the dependencies end up in this node modules directory. And at this point, we are ready to go. So we can actually even run this using the npm run dev command. I'm just going to go back up to our documentation here. This talks about creating it and building it, so I think we're good to actually, this is probably a little bit out of order here, but testing and debug is where we can actually test and debug the customizer, and npm run debug is going to allow us to do that. There's some other little tricks in here which we might get into, where it says testing alongside a custom connector. I'm not going to get into that right now, but basically you can create like a connector and then append the customizer commands below it. In most cases, you're not going to have the opportunity to do that because you're just trying to append this to like an out-of-the-box connector. But that's a useful thing to be aware of if you do want to test it alongside a connector. For now, though, we'll just run this npm run debug command. So go back in here, run debug, and now our customizer, once this gets started, should start running, because if we look in our code, there are some kind of implementations already here. Looks like after test connection, before account read, and after account read are already implemented. And it looks like it's running. So if I go into my postman collection, and again, let me just mention this really quickly, because how did I get all these customizer commands here? I got them from our postman collection, which if I go to our site, if I click on this postman collection, here's where you can grab those from. Once you download those, you'll have access to be able to run the tests just like I'm about to do right now. So if I go back to Postman now, and you can see we've got this test before test connection. If I run that, then it's actually going to fail, and it fails because it says no handler found. And that's because if we look at our code, whoops, and I just kind of went over this, but we'll just look at it a little closer so you can see there's no handler for before test connection. There's only a handler for after test connection. So we can go back in now and look at after test connection and run that command, and we get an empty object back, which is exactly what we'd expect because our input ends up being well, it's input, it's actually output because it's the after. But our output is this standard connection output, which is just regular object, and then we just pass that all the way through. So this is where we can start actually changing or modifying data in here. Right now we can see logger.info running after test connection, and you can see that command was there. But let's actually deploy this up. Let's do that first so that we have this thing running in Identity Security Cloud. We have this bound to a connector, and I can walk you through how to do that. So first, let's just terminate this session, and let's build our customizer. So if you remember, whoops, got to go back to our browser. Build and upload is here, and you can see we've got to do this create command, so we can do that first. And we're going to call this Solar Eclipse Customizer. Maybe a little wordy, but it'll work. And it is, I always like to name it the same thing. It can get a little confusing if you name your project different from the name that you have in Identity Security Cloud, so it's just a good idea to do it that way. So I've created it, now we can see the name of it. And then we need to run our npm run packzip. That will actually get it ready so that we can deploy it up to Identity Security Cloud. So now we've created the customizer in ISC, but we haven't uploaded our code to it yet. So it's ready to have the code uploaded to it. And once this is built, then we'll go through the steps of actually uploading it up in there. That can be a little confusing. It's like you have to create the customizer, and then you upload the code to the customizer, and then you link the customizer to the connector. Now, that'll take a minute to run, and while that's running, we'll get this next command ready, which is this, no, not that command, this command right here, which is where we're going to upload it to that exact space. And the one thing with this command also, with connectors, you can actually reference them by name. With customizers, you cannot as of yet. That may change in the future, but I'll open up another window here. And since that doesn't exist yet, go here, but if we scroll up, there's our ID. So I'm going to grab that ID and just, oh, okay, paste it in here. And then should find it, and it did because it already packed it up and zipped it up. So I can hit enter, and now my customizer is up there, and it has an image ID as well with a version associated with it. So customizer is now uploaded into Identity Security Cloud. It is ready to be used, but it isn't going to do anything yet until I actually bind it to a source that's up in there. So that's where we get to this linking to a source. I said binding. I guess technically it's linking to a source. So we're going to link it to the source. This is where things get a little confusing, but we'll get through it without an issue, I think. SailCon instances list. So if you remember, there's the SailCon list command. That'll give you a list of connectors. And then the con instances list will give you a list of instances of connectors. And these are the ones that, if just so you can see what this is, if I were to go into Identity Security Cloud, and then I said create a new connection. So if I go to connection, and then sources, and then I say create new. So if I were to create a new connector here, this is going to create a new instance of a connector. So I'm using this Solar Eclipse connector, and I'm creating another instance once I actually create it. I already have one created because I did it in the last session, so I'm going to use that one. Oh, I've got to get out of the create source. I just want to go into it. Yeah, here it is. Here's the one that I created before. This is the instance that I created before. I'm going to just drill into it so we have it here ready for us. And let's go back over here. So these are the instances. And if we look through these instances, we should see the Solar Eclipse instance, which is right here. So this is the one that we want to link. And then if we go to our documentation, what we want to do is link it to that source using this command right here. Okay, so this is the instance of the connector first. So let me paste this in. Whoops. Try that one more time. Copy, paste. Okay, and the instance of the connector. And then the customizer -c. And if you remember, our customizer is right here, that ID. So what I'm saying here is link this instance connector to this customizer. Okay, and it worked. And so now I can see that too. If I do SailCon instances list, again, you can see now I have this connector, Solar Eclipse, linked to this connector customizer. So we have that all set up now. And we should actually start seeing this logging happening running after test connection when I run the test connection. So let's try that now. So what I'm going to do now is just issue the SailCon logs statement. I'll wait for that to run. And then I'll go into Identity Security Cloud and test the connection. I did not expect that to happen. Let me try refreshing here and trying again. Command rejected. Yeah. Definitely not what I would expect, but let's try something else. Because I do have another connector up here that I can try linking it to. So before I go there and do that, let's look at unlinking from a source. So SailCon customizers unlink, we can try that command too. And then we're going to unlink the instance of the connector, which is this one. It's handy to know how to do this at least. And so that's unlinked. And actually, just out of curiosity, I want to see if that issue in here was due to that linking. It was not. Still doesn't like doing a test connection on here. Oh, it was. Okay. So something's going on then with linking a customizer to that particular connector. Not sure why. Let me try it with a different one though, because I have another one that I tried it with earlier that I didn't have issues with, and hopefully this one will work. So link, we'll try it with this other instance. And before I do that, I'm actually going to go in to that source. We'll just make sure that it's working well. All right, so it is working well now. And then we're going to copy and paste that one in. All right, and we've got our customizer linked up with it. Very nice. And then we'll try it one more time. We'll see if it's still healthy. And it is. Well, so we're lucked out. It's good that we have this other connection that we can use it with, or this other connector. Not sure why that other one failed, but doesn't matter. We'll move on. This will work just as well anyway. So we've got that log. Oh yeah, that's right. And then I wanted to actually watch our logs, which I'm not watching them here. Maybe I'll sale con logs tail. And so we should actually see some messages coming in now. Yeah, message running after test connection. So that message from that log is showing up here, which means that our customizer is bound to that connector. That's great to see. That means that we do actually have our code running in here. But now what do we do next? Let's try and do something kind of useful with this, because as of right now, it doesn't do anything. It just sends some logs out. So let's do a little bit of investigation first. Now that we have this working, this is going to be pretty easy to do. Thankfully, we didn't run into any more difficulties. I can do this, though, like logger .info. And let's just log out my config object, because I'm kind of curious what's in that config object. One thing you'll note is that with customizers, you don't have the ability, like you do with a connector, to define user input. So all that input's going to have to come from this config object. So I'm going to look at this really quick. And let's just pack and zip this after that very small change that I've made. We'll let that run for a second. And while that's running, I'm just going to talk through this config a little bit, because this is something that's, again, it's kind of the only way to get additional config into your connector. We're going to see the logs for that in a second, but that config object is going to store everything that's in the additional attributes field of the connector itself. So if I go into that particular connector and look at in my sources, so I'm in my v3 sources API, and I get a source by the ID. The only thing I need to do is figure out what ID that source is, which I can get that really easily right from my browser window. Paste that in and click send. And what this is going to do is it's going to show me a bunch of information about the source, but particularly under here, connector attributes, everything in here is going to show up inside of that config. So we'll look and see, is this all done? It is. So now we can just link it. Now I need to remember, which one did I link it on? Is that the right one? Oh no, sorry, we don't actually have to link it. I'm sorry, we just have to upload it. So that's good. That's a little easier. So I'm going to upload this, and now we have version 2, and it's already linked to the Airtable connector, so everything should be good there. I'm also, logging this out. So now if I go back to my Airtable connector and test this connection, go back in here, then not only will you see, that running after test connection log somewhere in here, running after test connection log, but you'll also see all of the attributes inside here. And you can even see like the secrets are just given out as plain text, so something to be aware of. Okay, so you probably don't really want to log that normally, but in this case it's fine to do. But you can get all the information from the connector right here. And what's cool about this is that you can also push up additional information into there by using a patch command. So if I go back to my source and go to patch, I'm going to copy this ID out and then go to my patch, update source partial, connector attributes, and we'll call this something like my custom API key, and then value. Well, we don't have a value for it yet, but we'll call it API value, and then send that up there, and hopefully that'll succeed. 200 OK. I can't remember. Did I think I put the new one in there. Let me just make sure though. F9C. No, I did not. I copied it and I forgot to put it in here. All right, and that's successful. So I should actually, okay. And it's Airtable v5 is the one I updated. I think if I looked before, it would have been that Solar Eclipse one. I think I put that ID in there earlier. But now if I look in here, I should see my custom API key somewhere in here. I know it's going to be in here somewhere. Well, maybe not. Airtable, there it is. Okay, I passed it up. My custom API key and then API value. So now we have that new value that's stored for this connector, and I can see it as well if I go and test a connection. And then I look at my logs that are streaming right now. Then again, I should see it in here somewhere. I'm not even going to look for it. There's too much going on in here. But I'm going to trust that it's somewhere in this log that I just output right there. So now we have kind of a way to add config objects. So that way you can have this customizer and add config options. Let's try and do something that's kind of useful. We've got a little bit of time left. And so what I want to do next is build a simple like logging service for this connector. And hopefully we'll get this done. I have Airtable open. Now you might not typically use Airtable for getting logs. You might use Datadog or something else. But this is just a kind of a cool implementation of a customizer that you may find useful, maybe not. Let's just create a simple table. We'll call this just logging, I guess. And then let's see here. For the name, we'll do like source. Okay, we don't really need this to be notes. We'll do this as just a single line text. We'll do command, maybe. And I'll just delete these ones. Well, this one I'll do this. I think it's going to be a formula, actually. And then, is there a created? Yeah, that'll work. Created time. Let's see if that works. Okay, cool. So now we have the created time of that field up in there. So we got source, command, status, and then our logging table, and I guess untitled base. So we'll call this one solar eclipse again. Just fun for that. So we got this nice base here. We need to create an API key to access this base. So let's do that real quick. Let me go into Developer Hub, create a new token, Eclipse, and for scopes, we just want to be able to write for this one, and the access will be our solar eclipse. Perfect. Create that token. Obviously, we're only see this once, so I'll just paste this in here. Yeah, I'll just. Oh, didn't want to create a file there. I'll just create a little .env file for now and put it in there, so at least we have it where we can use it wherever we need to use it. And okay, so we've got that created, done. And I've got my base here, so I'll copy this out as well and paste that right here. So that's our base. Probably be nice to document these a little bit better. I won't worry about that. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll just keep it that way. So next step, we have Airtable set up. We've got a table where we can put some information in potentially. Now we just need to build those hooks into our customizer so we can see it actually working. Now I will go ahead and npm install Airtable. That'll allow us to use the Airtable API a lot easier from within our project. Allow that to install. And the next step is to just start using it. So up at the top here, let's just do a couple imports. Let's see here. It was Airtable, I think. Oh, you know what? I think they have a special way of importing from Airtable. Yeah, that should work. Okay. And we've got our config loading, which is good. Oh, the one other thing that I wanted to set up really quick, I think we've got time to do it, is let me create a new file in here, and we'll name this config model. Now, one thing I wanted to show you is if I go over to our documentation again, there's this nice little config object right here. And so this represents all the stuff that you would get out of the config when you run, or all the stuff that's like default stored in a source config. So just copy that out and paste that in here. And so now we have a nice little model that represents all the stuff that would be stored in a config, minus the custom stuff that we may have added. So if you remember, we added this my custom API key. So I'll add that in here as well as a string. And in my index where I bring this thing in, I should be able to type this now, which is kind of nice. Did that take it from the right place? No, it did not. Let's see here. I trusted it too much. There we go. Get it from config J model. What did I do? All right, I'm just going to leave it. Little extra character in there. That's okay, though. Okay for the demo. So now we have our config. We've got some typing on there, which just helps a little bit. And now let me just get this all set up, and then we'll try testing it locally, and then we'll push this up, and hopefully we'll be able to see it actually working in the cloud for real. So we got Airtable brought in here. I do need to configure Airtable, so let me do that. Base equals new. Oh boy, did it get everything that I wanted? Oh, base ID. Technically, we could also store the base ID in that config. That'd probably be nice to do, but since we're a little bit short on time, I'm just going to go ahead and hard code the string in there. Probably not a good idea, but this will work. And by the way, yeah, that my custom, I just want to show you this because I actually brought the model in. We have it right there. And so that makes it kind of nice. So now we have our base, and the only thing I need to do now is just create a little function. Let's see. Let me do that. And let's see, what were the fields that we created in? Going back and forth here. We created, oh, I'm out of my, back to home. Back to home. Here we go. Let's go back in here. We have source and command. Okay. Source and command. So source, string, and command string. That should work. And then we'll return a promise. Yeah. That's fine, I think. Oh, look at this. Base events. Well, that's close. I think the table was called logging. Oh, that is kind of nice that it kind of did everything for me. Well, I don't know. Is that going to work? Yeah, let's try it and see. I don't even know if that's going to work, but that's the whole point of testing. Okay. And let's go back up to our connector where we're testing, because the last thing we need to do is call this guy. So wait. All right, now instead of this, config, oh, what were we sending in here? I think it was source and command. Okay. I didn't go through what was actually in here, but cloud display name I think is a good one to use. Again, it's really nice that we can kind of see like all the stuff that's in here too, like what we have access to. Cloud display name is a good one for the first one. And I think, yeah, I think that if we look at this context variable, dot, yeah, command type. I think that's going to work. Oh, it's not a string. Let's just, okay, yeah, that'll work. And so that should create our Airtable event. Let's try this locally. I mean, hopefully everything is working, is all set up properly here. I'm going to copy this out, go over to our Airtable. And again, how do we get those config values in there? Well, it's the same as how we did it up here in the connector commands. To make things simple, I'm just going to copy this out and go ahead and do that real quick here. All right. Config, yeah, that bothers me. Okay. And instead of token, we need my custom API key. And our actual API key. Okay, I don't think that, it's just looking like there's a line feed in there, but I don't think there actually is. And so now, this is the before. Don't want to make that mistake twice. Let's see here, how am I going to fix this? I'll just bring this stuff into the after. There we go. Nice. Now let's go back in here. Let's run this guy. Actually, before I run it this way, I'm going to open up a JavaScript debug terminal. That way, in case I do run into issues, I'll be able to debug. And we'll see what happens. Oh, you know what? We're going to need cloud display name, aren't we? Cloud display name. Cool connector. And we're also going to need, what was the other one? Oh, the context will be there. Yeah, so that's fine. I think it'll be there. We're going to find out. And it's running. So let's try running this thing and see what happens. Ooh, not found. Could not find what you were looking for. We probably have something wrong here in this create function. Or it could be that we just didn't do it right. I actually have a more accurate implementation of this. So I'm going to just copy and paste that over there. Because I know, well, assuming everything that I write is right, it'll all work. This is a little bit different, but let's just bring that over so we're not messing around with bad code on accident. Oh, it worked. Wow, so that was easy. And the question is, does it actually update my logging command here? I'm not sure if it will. Huh. Did seem to work. Source, command, the base is all good there. Let me try one more time just to make sure, because I see now it did say not found again. So maybe it's, okay, yeah, it is actually not working still. So let's see, do we have the right base? Do we have the, we just need to figure all that stuff out. Let me find out real quick here. Whoops. All right, here's the base ID. I may have had the wrong base in there. I think I did. Yeah. Let's try again. That first set of code probably would have worked. Aha! I don't know why that came out there. Am I logging it? Maybe I am. Let's go back to that table now. Hey, it worked! How nice is that? So now we're starting to get some logging happening in our Airtable table. The last thing to do now is to see what happens if I push this up to the cloud. So I just want to kind of brief overview of what we have going on right now, because it is a lot, I know, if you understand, if you were not following around completely. But what we have is now is I have this little method here, and actually like this method I can apply anywhere. So I can put it here, and here as well. And now anytime that this connector has a standard test command happen, it will append a new row to Airtable, which is, like I said, kind of cool because you could actually like build this generic customizer, and maybe you have some service like Datadog or something like that you want to send logs to that are specific though. Maybe you have specific things you want to look for, or maybe there's a connector that has issues on a time to time. This is a really good way to just like, let me append this customizer to it and see what's going on, see what's coming into it, see what's going out of it. Because you could then also, in here, you could start adding like the input into there so you kind of see what's going in, what's coming out at different intervals. So it's a nice thing to have. And what I'm going to do right now is try deploying this. So let me close this out. Let's pack and zip it as it is. While that's zipping up, I'm going to go into my environment, copy that API key out, go into Postman, go back into my patch, and put the right value in for that. Let's see if that works. And it did. Let this all finish up. We are almost there. And what we hope to see is once I deploy this and push this up, we'll be able to run the test connection command and actually see logging happening in Airtable, which would be pretty cool. So while we're waiting for that to finish, I'll get this all ready, make sure we're in the right place. Yes, we are. It's still building. It's done. All right. So let me go ahead and upload it now. Version 3. Test connection. And look at that, it worked. So now we actually have the correct source displayed, Airtable v5, the test connection happening, and the timestamp along with it. So yeah, amazingly enough, we were able to get through it all in 45 minutes. And you can hopefully see the value of that. It's so easy to really quickly just npm init a new customizer, build it. Hopefully you don't run into that error that I ran into earlier when you're creating a new connector and appending it to there. But thankfully it worked on this other one, and we were able to demonstrate all the stuff that I wanted to show today. And yeah, kind of also show how to add configuration objects to your customizer. So that's a useful bit of information to have. And then build your own custom logger. So I hope you all found that very useful today. And hope you had a great time at Dev Days. Thank you for all the attention that you gave us during this week and for walking through building a connector and building a customizer with me. So until next time, I'll see you all later.